It's a message from the fairies!
Hi, how are ya? I'm Fossil Daddy. When I was about 3 years old, I watched some pretty cool shows like Eureka's Castle, the Super Mario Bros. Super Show, mainly for the Legend of Zelda segments, not gonna lie.
This is the Triforce of Wisdom, Link.
Okay, you get the idea. It's a classic and nobody can tell me otherwise. David the Gnome, Peter Pan and the Pirates, and basically whatever else was on Nick Jr., Fox Kids, or Disney Channel at the time. These shows are all classics, and honestly you can't tell me otherwise. But there seems to be another classic on the horizon that has seemed to have risen above all the rest. It's no secret that kids have terrible taste in pretty much everything. They tend to watch the same things over and over until every frame is burned into their memory. I know, because I was, and largely still am, one of those kids. I can still quote full episodes of David the Gnome and Bobby's World and The Legend of Zelda.
Don't you ever do that again without telling me!
Well, excuse me, princess, you
Fucking bitch.
Death to all of them.
While I still love a lot of these properties and they really hold a special place in my heart, I did grow up in a time when children's media was made primarily to sell toys and merchandise, and there's really no denying that. This started to shift in the early 90s with Nicktoons like Rugrats and Doug, where originality and clear messaging began to become more prevalent, but not as much as it is today. However, rewatching some of these shows as an adult can be really disappointing when nostalgia turns out to be less great than remembered. Like Doug. I loved Doug growing up. Freaking boring as hell as an adult, though. Anyway, let me tell you about Bluey. Bluey is an Australian kids' TV show about a family of anthropomorphic dogs who walk, talk, and act like humans. Most of the time. It premiered on ABC in 2018, Australia's version of the BBC, and it's been taking over the planet ever since, whether you like it or not.
I like that.
There's a reason why it's the most watched kids show of all time. Eat your heart out, Peppa Pig.
Do you want to check my nose?
Now going back in time just a little bit, where David the Gnome helped me develop my taste in men with a preference for animal-loving pocket daddies back in the 1980s, if I had grown up with Bluey, I might have crossed that fine line from furry curious to full-on furry, because Bandit is just a delight in every way imaginable. Okay, sorry, I had to get that out of my system. Honestly, Bluey is one of the best kids' TV shows that I've ever watched, and frankly, I'm obsessed with it, and that isn't just my thirst for Bandit speaking. I wouldn't even consider it a guilty pleasure, it's just a pleasure to watch, sincerely. And honestly, it's way better than anything that I ever had on television as a kid. Let me tell you why.
Oh my! How rude! Can't you see that I'm on the toilet?
First off, what initially drew me to Bluey was its uniquely calming aesthetics. Before I became a paleontologist, I studied animation, so I always noticed the art style in any cartoon or piece of animation that I watch. The colors in Bluey are vivid, and the characters pop and perfectly complement their surroundings, and the character designs are incredibly charming. On occasion, I'd even say Bluey's backgrounds rival that of Studio Ghibli, and that's not a compliment that I really give that often. The world of Bluey feels diverse and lived in, whereas some shows tend to feel a little empty by comparison. Looking at you, Bluffington, from Doug.
Hiya, Big Nose.
Kill him.
Perfect!
The show's commitment to quality is evident in pretty much every aspect. It regularly brings me to tears with its relatable yet profound insights into family life and the lessons that it imparts about being a parent, or just being part of a family in the 21st century. I think aside from the art direction, which I could definitely go into a 45-minute tangent all about on its own, we definitely need to talk about Bandit and Chili. Bandit and Chili really do stand out, especially when compared to other animated parents. Unlike the often negligent parents in Rugrats who are mostly absent while the babies have their own adventures and nearly die in every episode, Bandit and Chili are always present and involved in Bluey and Bingo's lives. As a parent myself, I really appreciate how they don't talk down to their kids, but actually get down to their level, literally in most cases, and then engage with them as equals. This shows a lot of respect for their kids' perspectives and helps foster an open, more meaningful communication style. Which, being raised in a very different era myself, that wasn't really a thing. And a lot of older millennials are now living with the consequences of that.
You know what? I'm trying to stay positive, but this bitch is getting on my nerves.
In a lot of other cartoons, parents are more like background characters. Take Little Bear, for example, which I loved growing up, frankly. Mother and Father Bear are loving, but not really fleshed out. They're there for comfort, but mostly stay on the sidelines, as Little Bear frolics in the woods by himself befriending mermaids, which, depending on which mythology you lean into, could have very dire consequences. Speaking of mermaids, that brings me to my next animated couple, Mr. and Mrs. Reed from Arthur. You might be wondering how mermaids relate to these two, and don't worry, I got you covered, Twink. So Sonia Ball, who is actually the voice of Mrs. Reed, was also the voice of the Little Mermaid in Saban's The Little Mermaid. But that's a story for another video I'm working on, which is a documentary about Little Mermaid animated adaptations. So if you want to catch that, be sure to like and subscribe.
Just do as I tell you, Twink. Okay.
While on the topic of Arthur, which is another favorite of mine that I grew up with in the 90s, Mr. and Mrs. Reed are more supporting characters, often leaving Arthur and DW to figure out things on their own. And honestly, DW doesn't really learn much from her experiences most of the time anyway.
I told you not to touch it!
Perfect.
But Bandit and Chili are different. They're central to the stories in Bluey. They're always involved in their kids' play and learning, guiding them through life lessons with humor, empathy, and creativity. Their hands-on, down-to-earth approach to parenting makes them more relatable and aspirational for both kids and adults alike. Also, come on, it's Bandit. Look at him.
Nice speech. Say goodbye to your legs.
Bluey also just doesn't shy away from how hard it actually is to raise kids, and it really doesn't sugarcoat it. It gives a real and relatable look at parenting. For instance, there's an episode where Chili feels insecure about baby Bluey's development because Bluey can't walk like the rest of her peers, and she worries about this until a more experienced mom reassures her that she's doing a great job. And it's not even that, like, the mother literally looks at the camera and says,
"You're doing great."
Frankly, this is the first episode of Bluey that I even watched. And I'm glad I did, because it hit me in a really profound way that I wasn't expecting. I wasn't expecting to be told that I'm doing fine. And trust, I needed to hear that in that moment. So needless to say, I became addicted to Bluey ever since. There's also this other episode where Bandit comes home rocking a new mullet, and honestly, I wish he kept it, but an obviously exhausted Chili bluntly tells him that she needs 20 minutes alone, no interruptions.
Dad!
Right, dinner's in the slow cooker and they've had afternoon tea. I need 20 minutes when no one comes near me.
What?
Oh, yep. Okay. Come on, kids. Daddy-daughter time.
Hey!
And you've got a mullet!
She said they were back in.
It perfectly captures the need for personal space and the exhaustion that parents often feel, but very rarely express. In my own parenting style, I've learned to express the need for personal space pretty clearly, and just speaking personally as an ambivert here,
sometimes I just need to be left the fuck alone.
So again, this resonated with me on a whole other level. Then we have the Season 3 episode where Bandit is trying to juggle playing 2 different games with both of his kids, all the while trying to watch a race on TV for himself. In one game, Bingo keeps popping out pretend babies for him to take care of, as one does. And then we have Bluey shooting him with a futuristic toy gun at any opportunity. The chaos of trying to meet everybody's needs while sneaking in a moment for himself is really spot on. It shows how parents often struggle multiple demands and still put their kids' needs first. Good parents, anyway. It is also revealed later on in this episode that Bluey will one day be a mother herself, so that's actually kind of a nice surprise.
I hear ya! Hey, Bluey!
Hey, Dad. Come on, Bingo's out the back.
Oh, the house is looking good.
Thanks. Can you believe Dad almost sold it?
Are you ever gonna let that go? Huh? Hello? Huh. No one. That's weird. Oh no.
I'm not going to speculate who the father is, but my bets are on Mackenzie. These moments show that Bluey really gets the complexities of parenting and doesn't sugarcoat the struggles. It's also a show that acknowledges the hard work and dedication of parents, making it a comforting and almost validating watch for adults who have kids. And frankly, you don't even need to have kids to find it relatable as a struggling adult. Bluey really does stand out from other kids' shows, and it really stands out from the shows that I grew up with in the 80s and 90s by directly addressing both kids and adults with meaningful, relatable content. Back in my day, and I know that makes me sound really freaking old, but whatever, here we are, 40 years ago, going back to the 80s. Many kids' shows of that era often doubled down as advertisements for toys. For example, He-Man and Transformers, they were great shows, I loved them very much, but they heavily focused on selling action figures. Hell, even Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was made for the same reason. I mean, they came out as a comic first, it's a long story about how they were created, but the TV show in 1987 was directed more at kids than the comic book was, therefore to sell toys. And it worked. I had my fair share of Ninja Turtle toys and also bed sheets and pillows, all that stuff. Many shows from that era really didn't even appeal to parents unless they threw in the occasional dirty joke that went over kids' heads. Animaniacs and Tiny Toon Adventures are good examples. I mean, fingerprints. Really?
I found prints! No, fingerprints. I don't think so.
These shows had some really clever adult humor that parents might catch, but they didn't really offer much in the way of meaningful shared viewing experiences. In contrast, Bluey is the exact opposite of that. And then we have Bandit.
The boy is mine, the boy is mine, the boy is mine, the boy is mine, the boy is mine.
I'm gonna low-key be thirsting after Bandit a lot, so please bear with me. Unlike the shows that I grew up with too, Bluey also doesn't shy away from tough topics like death. In the episode Copycat, Season 1, Episode 39, this subject is handled very thoughtfully. The episode starts with Bluey copying her dad, Bandit, which annoys him a bit. They soon find an injured bird, a budgie, and take it to the vet, but it can't be saved. It ends up dying.
I'm sorry. It's bad news, I'm afraid. The little budgie died.
Oh, okay.
Oh, sorry, kiddo. Come here.
Later, Bluey plays a game with her sister Bingo, where Bingo pretends to be the injured budgie. Bluey then tries to recreate the day's events, but Bingo is not cooperative because she's 4 years old. Frustrated, Bluey is comforted by her dad yet again, and eventually accepts that some things are just out of her control. By the end, Bandit notices that Bluey has even stopped copying him. The episode highlights 2 key themes. First, Bluey stops copying Bandit's words, but continues to copy his caring actions, showing that kids emulate their parents, and honestly, that's true, they do. Second, it teaches that sometimes things just don't go as planned, and it's okay. And more importantly, it's okay if things aren't okay, because that's life. Bluey learns to cope with disappointment and understands that some situations are just beyond her control, and I think that is a very valuable lesson to teach kids at a very early age. I can't remember a show I grew up with that had so much nuance in its messaging. I think the only episode of a show that I grew up with that really stands out is Mother's Day, a Rugrats episode from season 4. In Bluey's Copycat, the focus is on Bluey learning to cope with the death of a bird and understanding that some things are not in her control. Throughout the episode, Bandit is actively engaged, providing emotional support and guidance. This consistent presence underscores the importance of parents being involved and empathetic, reinforcing the message that children learn from their parents' actions and behaviors. In contrast, the Rugrats episode Mother's Day is powerful and memorable in its own right, and honestly, it does still stick with me even, 30 years later? And it addresses the sensitive topic of Chucky's deceased mother. The episode explores Chucky's feelings of loss and confusion, culminating in a heartfelt moment where his dad shares memories of Chucky's mother. While this episode delivers a strong emotional impact, it contrasts sharply with the overall portrayal of parents in Rugrats. Typically, the adults in Rugrats are depicted as largely negligent, often unaware of their children's adventures and mishaps. This inconsistency can soften the episode's message about loss and parental love because it doesn't really align with the usual depiction of the parents' involvement. Or you know what, maybe I'm reading way too much into it, and if I am, I want you to fight me about it in the comments, twink. Before we go on, I would like to introduce today's sponsor, who happens to be me. I've launched a Ko-fi page. I think it's pronounced coffee, or maybe it's Ko-fi. Fight me on that too, if you'd like. And I plan on making this the main hub for all of my photo and video content. Buying me a Ko-fi unlocks exclusive content like fossil hunting photos, videos, and the occasional thirst traps, and of course, these videos a day early. You can also sponsor a fossil hunt there. For any amount over $25, I'll send you a fossil right from my fieldwork. I also offer surprise animation cells for my collection, perfect for fans of animation history like yours truly. I also offer membership tiers on Ko-fi and Patreon for ongoing support. Your support helps me continue to create content and sharing my adventures. Links are below and any support is greatly appreciated. Now back to the video. Now I'm only gonna dive into 2 other episodes, because frankly, I'm probably gonna be spending like an entire month editing this video, and ain't nobody got time for that. But they're definitely episodes worth talking about. One such episode is Flat Pack, which, as a paleontologist, caught my interest immediately. In Flat Pack, Bluey and Bingo are helping their parents assemble a flat pack furniture set in the backyard that I can only assume came from IKEA. While Bandit and Chili focus on the task, Bluey and Bingo's imaginations transform the boxes into various landscapes. The girls envision themselves from everything from prehistoric vertebrates, to people living in the Stone Age, to people living in the future. Bluey takes on the mother role, aging with each stage until her child, Bingo in this case, is ready to continue evolving without her. Bluey walks through the world that she built and ascends to her creators, in this case her parents. The episode ends with Bandit saying,
This is heaven.
This episode highlights a really sad truth. Someday, our parents will not be with us anymore. And as parents, someday we won't be here for our children. The emotional impact comes from seeing how quickly children grow and evolve, just like Bluey and Bingo's game, until it's time for them to leave the world that they helped create. Isn't that just the human experience? I don't know, it's just I wasn't expecting a kid show like this for preschoolers to hit me in such a strange way. I honestly don't remember any cartoon I grew up with such deep messaging. And for that, I do think Bluey is successfully killing my childhood, but in the best way possible. Another heartwarming, if not equally gut-wrenching episode would be Onesies, and this one dives into the topic of both being estranged from one's family and also infertility, spotlighting the estranged relationship between Brandy and Chili. For some reason, I have Brandy written down as Trixie in my script, but it's definitely Brandy. As someone estranged from my own biological family, this episode really hit home. We learned that Brandy's jealousy over not being able to have children caused their rift, and she couldn't bring herself to meet Chili's kids until about now. Watching Brandy play with Bingo and then seeing her long for a child of her own really feels like a gut punch every single time I watch it. Sleepy Time is also a beautifully crafted episode about Bingo's desire for big girl sleep, to stay in her own bed at night. Meanwhile, Bingo dreams of hatching from an Earth-shaped egg in space, symbolizing her journey toward independence. The simple yet profound lesson is that while children may grow up and need their parents less, their parents' love remains constant. Again, that's not the case for everybody. Some people do not have loving parents, but most are. Most people want what's best for their children. Sleepy Time is one of the series' most beautiful and emotional episodes. A touching moment really occurs when Bingo lets her stuffed bunny join her other bunnies around Saturn, reflecting her mother's love even as Bingo strives for independence. When Bingo is alone and shivering on a tiny planet, her mother's presence reassures her of her everlasting love even when she's unseen. Sleepy Time resonates deeply with parents and children by capturing the essence of unconditional love in the bittersweet process of watching children grow up.
I have to go. I'm a big girl now.
Remember, I'll always be here for you, even if you can't see me, because I love you.
Bluey truly does stand out in children's programming by tackling complex emotions and real-life situations in a way that's really accessible to kids and deeply moving for the adults watching. This dual appeal sets it apart from many older shows that focused on entertainment and simple moral lessons. Bluey and Bingo's growth and learning in each episode makes their journey really captivating for anybody watching. In contrast, shows from the 80s and early 90s, like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Rainbow Bright, Thundercats, and My Little Pony, were often designed to entertain and sell toys, like I've mentioned like 3 times now, because that was a big thing. Their messages were straightforward at most, lacking any emotional depth. For example, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles offered fun adventures and simple lessons about teamwork and courage, but didn't really explore the emotional lives of the characters. At least not until the later seasons, but those are regarded as some of the worst. But that's a story for another time. While I am extremely nostalgic for these shows, and mind you, I'm an older millennial, I'm built on nostalgia, just like any other millennial who might be watching, these shows just don't compare to Bluey's quality and emotional delivery. That doesn't mean that I can't love them, but it does mean that Bluey killed them. The music in Bluey, ranging from light and bouncy to powerful classical masterpieces, always enhances the storytelling. The artwork is consistently beautiful and detailed. Unlike many shows from the 80s and 90s where quality varied due to budget cuts and the challenges of hand-drawn animation, despite my love for hand-drawn animation. There's a sense of love and passion in Bluey that isn't as evident in other shows. Even in modern day, Bluey's supporting characters also add depth and realism, making the show feel like a living, breathing community. Characters like Bluey's friend Mackenzie bring energy and adventure, illustrating themes of loyalty and friendship. Uncle Radley and Frisky add richness to the show with their evolving romance, providing a nuanced look at adult relationships that resonates with adults. In contrast, many supporting characters in older shows were created primarily for comedic relief and felt unnecessary to the core of the story. Like fucking Rhonda and Hey Arnold. Was she necessary? Absolutely not. Plus she wore a fur coat, so I already hate her. She only got one good episode with Big Patty, and it wasn't one of my favorite episodes either.
Where's the excitement I crave?
Fatality.
If you haven't watched Bluey yet, you're missing out on something truly special. Dive in and see why it's a hit with pretty much everyone. You don't have to be a kid or even a parent to enjoy Bluey. It's definitely worth a watch. If you like this video and want to see more, hit like and subscribe or drop a comment down below. Or else.
Kim Kardashian